Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. We are back with the Ted Show. Happy Gratitude Tuesday. If you are grateful for something and you haven't told somebody, today's a great day to do it. We always celebrate Gratitude Tuesday. Tell the people you love and appreciate how much you love and appreciate them. You never know if that's your last opportunity. Trust me, all of us have dealt with it. So go out and be grateful today. I'm grateful to have the one and only Maria Cherjovsky on the show today. She's back. She's an alumnus of the TED Show. She's amazing. We're going to talk about F.A.I.N, Inc., and I'm going to let her tell you all about that, what that stands for. Everyone is disabled in one way or another. I love this title. So I am just always impressed by you, always excited to see you. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so give them a little background on you. You know, we love origin stories. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so the short version for for the people who saw me last time, I was representing the Central Florida Disability Chamber of Commerce as part of the National Entrepreneur Center at the Fashion Square Mall. I have worked in this space for about 26 years in academic environments, nonprofits, helping private entities both domestically and internationally. And most of the projects that I have worked on, some by chance and some that I have chosen to spearhead, all relate to creating opportunities for upward mobility, workforce development for all people from all walks of life. So that's the background in a nutshell.
That's the background.
Yes.
So tell me, you said you've been working in the space 26 years.
Yes.
Have you really seen positive change? Have we actually made progress?
We have made some progress. I would like to have seen more. I think that the law has certain changes to the law always help because everybody's looking for compliance, right? Nobody likes lawsuits or wants to get in trouble. And that is one of the biggest drivers. I think the area where we could certainly do some more is the human factor coming at it from a societal need for change because it is our social and civic responsibility. And those are some areas where I think that as a society, we have awakened and we see the movements that are happening more so this year than ever before. And they will probably continue. We have made great strides, but it takes every one of us acknowledging our own biases and challenges, becoming an ally and advocating for the right thing.
I think a lot of people, they don't know how to be an ally. I think people want to help. They obviously want to be respectful. They want to be part of a solution to getting as many rights and inclusion and accessibility as possible. They don't know how to do it. So how does somebody who says, you know what, I love what Maria's talking about, how do they get involved, and what's the best way for them to be an ally?
There are many ways to get involved. Most individuals are the impression that you need the organization to establish a norm, establish a group. But in reality, we can all make a difference, right? Whether it's volunteering or mentoring or joining or even helping create an employee resource group, business group, whatever you want to call it. There's some differences. We're not going to get into that today. Some have a charter, some do not. The main thing is to listen, to understand, to learn to advocate, to empathize, and not commiserate. People are not looking for pity; they're looking for opportunities. For those who are in management positions, we should strive towards recruiting smarter, looking for skill sets versus key demographics. That is a slippery slope proposition. When we hire based on demographics, we fall back into compliance, right? The metrics that we need to report based on the funding that we may be able to tap into or expectations from our board, so on and so forth. But that's not where the true cultural change is happening. We do much better when we forget the demographics, at least temporarily, because that's what makes us, right, our own unique demographics. But when we put that aside and we look at skill sets, not only we're more intentional with the hiring, we also get a more diverse pool of applicants from whom to select from. But then more importantly, we create a very diverse team, sometimes non-intentionally. And last but not least, I mentioned before, a mentor Acknowledging our own biases is another way to become an ally. Finding ways to speak up and not be a bystander. And again, it can be at home, in the upbringing of our own. I have 2 teenagers, so we have lots of conversations about these topics. Right, because they're now, old enough that they see what's happening in the world, and they're forming their own opinions, and I want them to look at things holistically. But for moms that not work, and they may say, well, I don't work, so what am I supposed to do? Well, your peers, your friends, your mom groups, your church, the PTA. There's just so many places. Anybody who has social interactions, every one of those venues becomes an opportunity to become an ally.
And so I think a lot of people will say, all right, well, there's lots of laws already protecting our disabled. And I've even had people correct me. I wasn't allowed to say the word disabled once. There was another term, something that was probably sounded more positive. But I think a lot of people go, all right, well, I would love to hire somebody. I would love to engage somebody. I would love it. But everything that I've read, it seems like it's going to be a Herculean task for me to be able to do that. How do you address that?
Well, first of all, know the facts. The organization that I represent today that I didn't get to mention, because we talked about the history.
Yes, please.
Is the Florida Abilities and Inclusion Network, which is basically a strategic realignment of the Chamber of Commerce, because we realized that to be truly intentional and help organizations in this market and others, because now with COVID, everybody's working remotely. So county lines and state lines really don't mean much anymore. But the purpose was to go above and beyond creating opportunities of connection of business to business and networking, and really get into more in-depth conversation about the recruitment and retention of people, the different skill sets that people are looking for. The fact that as a society, we make choices with every single purchase that we make, whether it's in person, online, what restaurant we go to, where we fill gas, based on what we know about the organization. And we hold these organizations accountable for taking care of the environment, for giving back to the community. And more so now than ever before, there's more and more talk about the need for a diverse workforce. So we expect for these organizations to hire and be made of individuals that represent the same community that they serve. Because now we're choosy buyers, we're savvy buyers. So I'm going to buy from those that I believe in and who are going to put my dollars to good use, and not just pocket them, right? So lucrative sales are always important. That's what keeps the economy going and businesses going and us employed. But we also need to make sure that those earnings are being put to good use to help the society as well. And that could be given back, foundations, programs, charitable opportunities, mission days, volunteer, whatever it may be that can be done or should be done. So it's not a Herculean task, because the truth of the matter is that it all stems from stigmas and biases. Stigmas on the side of the individuals that may have a disability, who may feel that they're going to be rejected, that they're going to be looked at differently, that they may not be welcomed, and that they may be even passed for promotions if the opportunity were to arise. And from the employers, the assumptions that tend to come up have to do with what we think of an individual with a disability. We know that the wheelchair sign is a universal symbol of a disability, and that's one that we recognize. However, it has also resulted in us thinking of a disability in just that. In reality, and that's what the title of today's show, everybody is disabled one way or another, because I have glasses. We know and have lots of people close to us who may be going through cancer, who have diabetes, who have high blood pressure, who may have early onset of Alzheimer's disease, who have so many different conditions that, although you're right, you don't want to call someone that person's disabled, because it sounds as though the disability or condition in this case defines the individual, because it doesn't define them. But in reality, we all have something. And as we age, we're going to have more and more on that, right? For those of us who have the opportunity to live long, and those ailments will continue to show up, right? That's just the nature of aging and growing up. So between the fact that we're not retiring anytime soon, most people at least do not. We're living longer as human beings, at least the statistics say so. So what happens as we age and more ailments come to become part of our lives? We still have to function, we still have to work. And so why not take the time now to make a difference and really advocate for what may benefit us in the future as well? um, the the challenge resides in the fact that many of this, well, there's a few different ones. Unemployment for people with disabilities is always much greater than typical individuals. I have some numbers here I can share with you.
Say that stat again, and I'm having camera trouble. That's why we're looking at you. Say
That's all
that
right.
stat again.
That's all right. The 2017 actually census, because the 2020 hasn't come out yet, has reported that 1 in 4 people has a disability. So 61 million people in the U.S. alone. The Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2019, so just last year, reported that individuals without a disability are employed at a rate of 66% versus people with disability only at 19% rate of employment. And of those 19%, 32% of those are employed half-time, so basically part-time. The main reasons for that, as some people may ask, and they asked me this morning at a different event, is it has to do with not every day is going to be a good day, right? That's one reason. The second one is the fact that transportation is by far the biggest barrier for anybody with a disability. So unless they have someone at home that they can rely on who can drive them to places and appointments, between doctor's appointments that tend to have more frequency than for someone who is not going through any kind of needs or treatment, that's going to be a barrier. If they're not able to drive because of a motor related condition, physical condition, or they just don't qualify for a driver's license, or they just don't have the means. Remember, they're not working full time, and or they may not make sufficient funds. They may not make enough money to pay for a car. That's the bottom line. So they may rely on links or other means of transportation, and those require a routing system, right? They need to be booked 3 days in advance. They have to, this is no different from when you travel to another city and you hop on one of those vans that stop at every single hotel. It may take an hour and a half to get to your destination. So by default, individuals who are going through treatment or have recurrent doctor's appointments do not always have the ability to work full time because their health also takes priority, and it takes a lot longer for them to mobilize and go from one place to the other. So those are things that we need to take into consideration. And then last but not least, which is also a reality, is that in some industries at least, we know that sometimes it's a strategic decision to employ people part-time so that they don't have to give them health benefits. So imagine someone potentially with a chronic condition, which is why I said we're all disabled one way or the other, right?
I love the title.
We have some things that we're born with and some things that we develop. And I mentioned some, right? Anybody can get into an accident. You may develop diabetes, high blood pressure. There's different things. You can have a stroke at any age. So any one of those conditions really will impact any individual in society. It's not what we tend to think of a disability, and it changes our life forever. From an employer's perspective, which was one of your points, there are a lot of things that can be done. One of them is providing enough resources and benefits. The most common one is EAP, right? The Employee Assistance Program.
Yes.
It's a third party. Large companies tend to have those. But even then, most individuals are not going to utilize them because there's a fear with whether their information will truly be retained private. So privacy is the biggest reason for not accessing those. But we need to take the discussion one step further, and that's in-house, right? Within the organization, developing a culture of inclusiveness. One of the biggest challenges is that not all organizations have really gotten on the diversity and inclusion bandwagon, let alone disability inclusion.
Why is that, do you think? Why aren't people jumping on it? And I'm sorry, I have no camera, so you get to see Ted, but I'm here. Okay. Why is it that people are so slow to adapt anything? We talk about inclusion, diversity, like inclusion and diversity, separate issues, joint issues, however you want, but we talk about that, and yet we're slow to move on it, I feel like.
We are. So there's a study that I saw just last week, and it talked about some of the same things, right? Because I try to speak based on facts and not just Maria's opinions. But that at the end of the day, the consensus is pretty much the same. You need buy-in from the top. You need commitment in terms of initiatives, goals, resources, financial and others, and a lot of other things to make that happen. I've seen a lot of very large organizations that support it. In theory, they do, and wholeheartedly they do. But without the resources, the staffing, and making a commitment, even to the point of making bonuses tied to diversity and inclusion goals being met, and whatever those may be, will be up to the company to define, you're not going to see an entire workforce committing and becoming involved in it. And the end result is that it really becomes incumbent upon the individuals who are in the front lines, who are the ones advocating for help, advocating for assistance, to take this on their own time. So I have spoken with, again, like I said, many large companies that have said, I absolutely support it. I tell my people, once you get your job done, your work done, by all means, we'll support this. You know, you can do it. But those are the people that are hourly waged, the ones that compromise potentially the ability to get their job done, because they have to choose between some of these extracurricular activities and their work, because their performance depends on it. They have managers and supervisors who may or may not support it, because they're sandwiched between high-level executives and the frontliners, and they're the ones tasked with meet the goals, meet the goals, meet the goals. So we need to make diversity and inclusion, disability inclusion, part of the goals. And that's really the only way that these changes will take place. Now, some organizations, because I don't want to sound negative, many organizations have made tremendous strides. They have selected segments within the diversity and inclusion spectrum. They have selected specific conditions within disability inclusion as well. You'll see programs like autism at work. You see other things like that. Organizations that will create internships specifically for college graduates that are just leaving college, who have a condition, and they put them through a 12-week internship, and they guaranteed a job with the company and a career for life if they choose to. So that's not to say not everybody's doing that.
Right.
But you asked me why. And the biggest reason, like I said, is lack of support, lack of understanding, lack of funding, because you have to have people who manage that. It can be a social activity. It has to be structured with some specific outcomes, right? We're dedicating staff time, resources, money, so on and so forth. And so it needs to really change the organization. We also need to make sure that any rules, regulations, policies within the company, as well as job descriptions, are written in a way that are inclusive. Our recruitment processes have to also accommodate for different kinds of applicants, for whom going to a website may not be the best way to apply. They may not be able to use those tools. Someone visually impaired may not have the necessary tools at home to do that. They would much rather do something on the phone or face-to-face. And again, I'm talking about disabilities right now.
Sure.
So there's a lot. There are a lot of things like that. And then there's also the sense of belonging. Nobody wants to be the very first person they hire that fits that profile, right? Because then, do you belong? Are you accepted? And that only happens if you have a true cultural change within the organization, that everybody's accepted because of their differences, because that's where strength comes from. Everybody's differences is everybody's assets. And if we don't really acknowledge that, and we look at someone because they're different, then we're really defeating the whole purpose of inclusiveness. So there are a lot of things like that. And last but not least is, of course, fear of lawsuits and biases against minorities, mostly the unconscious bias, right? Again, we tend to think of people with disabilities as lower performers. Maybe they don't understand. I'm sure you have seen this before, interactions in out in the open, when somebody will approach someone with a disability, a visible one, right? And they'll start to talk to this person. Hi, how are you today? And the person will like, fine, how are you? You know, and you realize that there is no difference. And so those are the moments where we tend to find them comical, but it also tells a story about the lack of understanding, lack of knowledge as a society about some of the conditions that people suffer, yet are perfectly capable of functioning and contributing to society. There's a comic.
I think we just need to be educated, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the education is so important. I think there's even like a verbiage Like I mentioned to you earlier, and sorry, I don't know where my camera is, but I am here. Um, I mentioned to you earlier that there are people who don't know, are afraid to even use the word disabled. And so trying to figure out your verbiage, being educated on what that means, what that includes, how to address people. I think there's all sorts of basic 101 education that we could do better for our society so they understand how to interact better.
Absolutely. If I can sum up an answer for you on that, it's really incumbent upon the individual if they want to acknowledge that they have a disability and how they would like for that to be referred to. Because in reality, we need to speak to them first person, right? The person's not disabled. It's a person with a condition.
Yes.
Right? The person's not autistic. Is an individual who has a diagnosis or a condition that happens to be autism. We don't have someone who is blind. We have someone with a visual impairment, right?
Yes.
The person's
Yes.
still a person. It hasn't changed, but they have a condition. It's a person with diabetes. It's a person who's undergoing cancer treatment. It's a person who had a stroke. However, that is only when the individual who has that condition has given us permission and has opened the door for that dialogue. Otherwise, those comments are left out. You don't talk about someone, oh, this poor person that suffered through this and had that. No, because we are embedding our unconscious bias in introducing a sense of pity towards that individual, which then impacts the other conversations that this individual may have with whomever we just introduced them to. Whereas I would say, this is Ted. I wouldn't say, this is Ted, poor thing. Ted suffers from X, Y, and Z.
Correct.
No, you don't do that. In society, we don't do it. But somehow, when it comes to disabilities per se, people feel a need to share that because, oh, treat them with kindness. Be more careful with them. They're people. At the end of the day, they're people, just like us. That disability or that condition does not define them.
I love that, Maria, because I think a lot of people, it's when they describe people, they're looking for this description, and you don't have to include that. Can I just say, Maria has reddish brown hair? Why does it have to be Maria's disabled or Maria's Black or Maria's Hispanic? Or we add these things and we don't need to.
Like, you're not going to say, oh, let me introduce you to Maria. By the way, she has an accent. You don't say that, right?
Yeah. No, and I don't know, but I think people, it goes back to the education. People are uncomfortable. They don't know how to do it. I have a friend who has employs a really good set of adults that have Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Do you refer to them as disabled? Is the verbiage that way? Nope. I know it's not, but I think people don't know how to speak, and so they get afraid and then they don't speak at all.
Well, I think the key thing is that we don't make a big deal about their condition. It is part of what they live with, and it shouldn't really be part of the conversation. And like I said before, and I see the comment there, thank you, Libby.
Terrible. Sorry, Libby.
Yeah, I said verbiage doesn't bother me, and that's why I said it's about the individual giving you permission, right? We don't want to pigeonhole someone or create a perception that there's a limiting factor to the individual. Right. They're people, and if they need any kind of accommodations, or when they tell me, hey, can you slow down, or can you show me this? I have a good friend now who's also visually impaired, and she sent me some things. I'm like, I can't read them. It's all jumbled. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. I use some tools that I use for people that have my condition. And so we got to talking more about that. What are the differences? How does it work? But other than that, they're people, right?
Correct.
We all have conditions. I have some too. That's why I said we all have something.
We all have it. That's why I love this topic. I think it's amazing.
Says,
all right.
I don't take
Tell me. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if somebody tells you, I've never taken any medicine, I don't need medicine, I've never gotten hurt, I've never had surgery, I've never had any limiting factor, well, I would tend to question that. So in
Agreed.
one way or another, we're all disabled at some point in life.
All right, tell people how they can get involved, how they can learn more, how they can hire, how they can learn to better navigate through and include people, and be inclusive in their hiring and their networking. What's the best way, Maria?
The best way is to really focus on training your staff. develop a culture and some of inclusiveness, develop some diversity and inclusion goals for the organization. If there's a way to have those coupled with incentives, even better. But it really needs to be adopted company-wide. If there's resources that are lacking or they're starting out, they've never done it, that's what we're here to do. The Florida Abilities and Inclusion Network, that's what we do. We have created a network of employers from different industries, many of which have followed us from the days of the Central Florida Disability Chamber, who are working with us to learn, explore, and expand their own diversity and inclusion strategies, models, and programs, and to learn and to network, because it's not network business to business as much as it is networking to learn and share best practices. At the end of the day, we're people, we need to help each other, and employers are equally eager to share those best practices and learn from one another. That's how we advance this and we accelerate the process.
You're amazing, Maria Cherjovsky. I'm very excited to have you on the show. Always love having you come on and talk. Guys, get involved. Reach out to Maria. The website's there. I've tagged her. You can reach out to me and I'll put you in touch. But engage, be inclusive. Understand that it's not a scary task to do that and step out a little bit. Nobody's going to yell at you for not being educated on what to say and how to say it the first go round. If you're interested in being educated, reach out to Maria. You're amazing, Maria. Thank you so much for putting up whatever this little thing is with me. I have no idea, but you're prettier, and you obviously, congratulations, lost a ton of weight. You look amazing. So it's so much better for people to look at you.
Thank you.
Reach out to Maria. Thank you so much for all you do, Maria.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a good one. Bye everybody.